Welcome to the Dog Mom Knits YouTube channel. This is part 7, the final part of the knitting series, How to Knit a Dishcloth. In parts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I showed you how to cast on, knit a stitch, follow a pattern, bind off, and weave in your ends. In part 6, I showed a variation of the very first dishcloth that I taught you, which was the stockinette stitch dishcloth, and showed you how to purl. In this video, I'm going to show you variation number 2 in the pattern that I have linked down below. This is called Grandma's Favorite Dishcloth. This dishcloth is everywhere and really fun. So if you would like to challenge yourself just a little bit more with your knitting and do something just a little bit different than a garter stitch or stockinette stitch dishcloth, Grandma's Favorite is for you. I will admit to not knowing which grandma is referred to in the pattern. Every time I see this pattern, it's just called Grandma's Favorite Dishcloth. And so if it's good for anybody's grandma, it's good for me. I have knit a bunch of these washcloths or dishcloths. If I'm going to knit a dishcloth, this is the one I'm going to knit. I will admit to loving it. So for this pattern, you are going to need a skein of yarn, 100% cotton yarn. I am using Knit Picks Dishy Multi in the colorway Aquarium Multi. You're also going to need a set of needles. I am using size 6 circular needles, but you can use, and I encourage beginners to use I'm using size 7 circular needles, but you can use size 7, 6, or 8 straight needles. Dishcloths are very flexible. I also find using a row counter helpful, but you can use a pen and a piece of paper. And you are going to need a tapestry needle or darning needle when it is time to weave in your ends. So for the Grandma's Favorite Dishcloth, which again is available in a multitude of places online, but I do have it linked down below in the pattern with the 2 previous dishcloths that I have used in this tutorial. So I'm not going to show every single step of this pattern because I've already covered those in previous parts of this playlist, but I want to cover, with this video, I want to cover the things that you don't know how to do yet. So as stated previously, the first thing you should do when you're presented with a new pattern is read through it to make sure you and the pattern designer are on the same page and that you understand what the pattern designer is asking you to do. So for this pattern, you're also going to need a stitch glossary, which is simply where the pattern designer has written out any acronyms that they're using or abbreviations and what it means. So for Grandma's Favorite Dishcloth, it says cast on 4 stitches. Okay, I know how to do that. No problem. Row 1 says knit 4. And then row 2 says knit 2, yarn over, knit across the row. So this yarn over is one of the things that I'm going to teach you in this video. And then it says repeat row 2 until you have 44 stitches on the needle. That's what my row counter is for. Then row 3, which is really not row 3, row a lot, says knit 1, knit 2 together, yarn over, knit 2 together, knit to the end of the row. This is not as scary as it sounds. I will show you how to knit 2 together. You're already going to know how to yarn over. This is not a big deal. It says repeat row 3 until you have 4 stitches on the needle and then bind off. So a yarn over is an increase stitch. It's a way of going, in this case, from 4 stitches to 5 stitches. A knit 2 together is a decrease stitch. So we'll be going from 44 stitches to 43 stitches. So the cast on for this project is very small. It says cast on 4 stitches. So you're going to start with this little amount of stitches, and it's going to grow out to 44, and then you're going to shrink it back to 4. So it's essentially like small, big, small, and then you'll turn it and it'll be a square. So let's start Grandma's favorite dishcloth. So again, I'm not going to show everything because I already have that in previous videos in this playlist. But the first step is to cast on 4 stitches. So I'm going to use the long tail cast on method, which is what I showed in video 1 of this playlist. And really simple, you're just going to cast on 4. And then it says knit 4. Okay. No worries. That's in video 2 of this playlist if you need a refresher. Sorry, I'm just trying to do some yarn management and not knit with my tail. So I'm going to complete row 2, which is knit 4. Okay, so I got that done. I'm going to turn my work. And now row 2 says knit 2, yarn over, knit across the row. So I'm going to knit 2, 1, 2, and now I have to yarn over. So what a yarn over is bringing the yarn over my working needle. So my working needle is the needle that I am using to work the new stitches. It is the needle in my right hand. And to yarn over, you are simply going to bring the yarn from the back around the front and back to the back. So again, a yarn over is taking the yarn from the back of the working needle to the front and then over. So to yarn over, you just bring the yarn over. And then you knit to the end of the row. And then the directions say, the pattern says, repeat row 2 until you have 44 stitches on the needle. So this is what I do. I get my row counter. I have 5 stitches on the row, on the needles now. Whoops, I'm rolling the wrong side. So I'm just going to, what am I doing wrong? I'm just holding this thing all kinds of wrong. Oh my goodness. There we go. So I'm just going to roll this to 5 stitches. And every time I get to the end of a row, I'm just going to move it up 1 so that I'm not having to stop and count. I'm at 40, stop and count. I'm at 42, stop and no. I'm just going to do this at the end of each row so I remember I have 5 stitches, 6 stitches, 7 stitches, etc. So the pattern says repeat row 2 until you have 44 stitches on the needle. So knit 2, yarn over, knit across. So knit 1, knit 2, yarn over. So my yarn is in the back. And I'm going to bring it around the needle. This is the yarn over from the previous row. So you can see how big it is. So I'm going to knit it just like I would any other stitch. It just has a lot of extra room. So I'm going to insert the needle, knit the stitch, and then just knit until I get to the end of the row. I'm going to turn my work. update my row counter, and then get ready to knit again. So I'm going to knit 2, yarn over. So bring the yarn from the back to the front and then over the top of the needle. And then I'm going to knit to the end, knitting that yarn over when I get to it. And when I get to the end of my row, I'm going to take my row counter and move it up to 7 stitches. So when you yarn over, you get these holes in your work. So if you look back and you're like, oh no, I have a hole. Yep, you're supposed to. You should have 2. That is one of the decorative features that Grandma's Favorite Dishcloth uses, is these yarn overs to make kind of a lace border on the edge of your knitting. So the pattern says repeat row 2 until you have 44 stitches on the needle. So I'm going to go do that, and I will be back to show you how to knit 2 together. So my row counter says that I am at 44 stitches. I did count just to double check. And I have 44 stitches on my needle, so I'm ready to move to the next part of the pattern, which is labeled row 3. And it says knit 1, knit 2 together, yarn over, knit 2 together, knit to the end of the row. Again, that sounds much more daunting than it actually is. So let's just go step by step. Oops, sorry about that. So it says knit 1, then it says knit 2 together, which is exactly what it sounds like. Instead of knitting 1 stitch, like I normally would, I'm going to take my needle, my working needle, and I'm going to go into 2 stitches together. So there's 1 stitch, there's the other stitch, and I'm going to, knit them together. And then I'm going to yarn over, and then I'm going to knit 2 together. So again, not just knitting 1 stitch, I'm going to knit 2 of them at the same time. So I'm going to try to get really close. So I'm just going to put the needle into both the next 2 stitches. Yes, okay, I'm right. And knit them together. And then I just have to finish the row. And then the pattern says repeat row 3, which is the knit 2 together row, until you have 4 stitches on the needle. So again, as I spoke about in the beginning, we started with only 4 stitches and we increased out to 44, and you can see my little yarn over holes right there. Now we're going to start going in the other way. So you started with 4, we increased to 44. Now we're going to decrease down to 4, and then you're going to bind off just like you're used to doing and like you have done in the previous 2 dishcloths. So that's it for Grandma's Favorite Dishcloth. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope that this inspired you to try something new with your knitting. And I hope that you just have a great time making these fun and functional dishcloths. Happy knitting!